Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hey friends, while I do have a few recorded conversations with women that I'm eager to post, I wanted to pop in and just share some thoughts about how I'm dealing with things right now. I know it's really helpful to me when I hear how others are navigating everything that's been going on, so I thought I'd take a little time to share my own experience. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been giving a lot of thought to this, and specifically, I've been thinking about how I'm dealing with the pandemic. But honestly, worrying about a pandemic almost sounds trivial right now when you consider what else is going on. Of course, I'm talking about the egregious acts of police brutality that have hit the spotlight. And thank goodness there is a spotlight on this now. But it's just so disheartening. It's so sad. So I want to recognize that this is weighing heavy on me, but I do want to continue with my original intention for this short episode and share how I've been dealing with things over the past few months, how I've been coping. The reason I want to still talk about this is because I think we all have a responsibility to do the best we can to stay mentally and physically healthy, to find a way to cope with everything so that we can be better prepared to help change our society, to make it a better place, a more inclusive place, a place where all people feel safe and where bad behavior isn't tolerated. This is the She's Bold podcast, and I don't think you can be bold without having your own mental and physical game on. So with that, allow me to share my thoughts on what I originally intended to talk about this week. That is sheltering in place, or as our governor says, stay home, stay healthy, and how I've been navigating my way through it. Obviously, we've all been sitting with some sort of shock, anger, sadness, despair, call it what you will, for more than 3 months. Here in the Seattle area, that's how long it's been since we had the first COVID death. And it's been nearly 3 months since our governor started shutting down gatherings, schools, and businesses. It's really incredible how that seems like forever ago, but 3 months really isn't that long of time. I'm actually just now starting to understand, with a little bit of hindsight, why everyone has been responding so differently and so strongly with their own view. We've all got our own coping mechanisms. We're all dealing with this in such different ways. And it comes down to self-preservation. Some people are completely sheltering in place because for them, this is life or death. They might be immune compromised, they might be older, maybe they just feel fragile, and they have taken this very seriously from the beginning. Others are demanding that businesses open up because they need to get back to work. They've completely lost their income. They can't feed their families. They can't pay their rent. Others are essential workers who feel they have to go to work but are terrified of being exposed to the public. So they have their own fears and concerns. Bottom line is that we're all just doing our best with what we've been handed right now. And frankly, for many people, our best isn't very good. Certainly, we've all had our low points, even the best of us. But we just have to remain patient with our friends and our family and our neighbors and even strangers. Because this is new territory for everyone. We're all trying to figure it out. And the best we can do is to be kind in the process. While I realize I may have needed a dose of reality early on to understand that this wasn't just going to be over quickly, I do remain a hopeful person. And responding with despair or depression isn't my default response. My self-preservation, the way I cope, is to not necessarily look for the silver lining. Sometimes I actually hate that. Or just to look at the bright side. But instead, to prepare for the worst, but focus on a best case scenario. First and foremost, I've been acting as if. You've probably heard me say this before, but it's important to repeat. I act as if this will be over soon. I act as if the worst case scenario will not happen. And I truly believe that the worst case scenarios that do get the top headlines will not happen. If I bought into those, then I might fall into despair. But if I can keep the big picture in mind that we will get through this sooner or later, then I can keep moving forward. And I know the most difficult part of this is the unknown. How long will this go on? No one knows. And that's really the most frustrating part of all this. It just sucks. In addition to acting as if, there are a couple of things that I've practiced over the past 5 to 12 years or so that I think have really helped me. First, I've been meditating, attending Buddhist teachings, and reading about Buddhism for the past 12 years or so. Actually, reading about Buddhism, that goes back 20, 30 years. In Buddhism, there's quite a bit of talk about the acceptance of death. For the uninitiated, talking about death can sound really morbid and sad. But through these teachings, you learn that it's a way to accept life and appreciate every moment because you don't know how long we have here. And when you approach life in this manner, what some would say in a more mindful way, you learn to have a certain level of acceptance with the things that are happening, particularly those things you have no control over. You only have control over how you respond to them. It doesn't mean that we should just accept everything and not try to change the injustices of the world. I think it was the Dalai Lama who said, some things must not be tolerated. Another way to look at this is to accept the things I cannot change, have the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I try, but I'm not always successful, to use this filter when I think about what's happening around me. What are the things that just are and I need to accept versus the things that can and should be changed, and what can I do to affect that change? Sometimes I don't have the wisdom to know the difference. When that's the case, what comes out for me is frustration and anger because I want something to be different, but I'm powerless to change it. Meditation has become very common and accepted outside of Buddhism, so maybe you have some experience with it in your own religion or non-religion. And that's great because there are actual physiological changes that happen to your brain that are directly tied to meditating. Although I didn't know it at the time, it's probably these changes that I felt a dozen or so years ago that kept me on a regular course of meditation. By spending even 5 to 10 minutes a day with a sitting practice, it smoothed out my rough edges, it calmed me down, it made me less angry, it made me less reactive. While I still have emotion about what's going on around me today, I'm more calm than I otherwise might be. And I can look at these events with concern and compassion and ask myself, how can I help? Hey, meditation isn't for everyone, but if you already have a practice, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know how helpful it can be. But if you don't have one and at least want to try it out, I suggest you check out some guided meditations on apps such as 10% Happier, Insight Timer, Headspace, or Calm, and there's probably another dozen or so out there that are quite helpful. So meditation, that's been really helpful to me. The second thing I think that has really helped me cope is what I've learned from running. Running itself is awesome. Of course, it's healthy because it's exercise. I'm working on improving my health. And it's something to focus on, a daily habit. Now, if you're not a runner, no problem. But find some form of exercise, as that's really crucial right now. We've got to keep our immune systems boosted. We've got to be out in fresh air. We have to be out in sunshine. All of those things come together. They're going to make you feel better. So yeah, running has given me an excuse to get outside and exercise. And even though my races, at least for the early part of this year, have been canceled, I've made up my own running projects to keep me motivated. Now, just before the pandemic started, I had the idea to run every street and alley in my neighborhood. Ricky Gates did this in San Francisco as part of a project for Strava where he ran all the streets there. So I thought I might take it one step further and run all the streets and alleys in my neighborhood. And it turns out my neighborhood is much bigger than I expected. So it's taken me quite a while. Now, this has been great because it's given me a reason to go out the door, to lace up, and when I return, I can see my progress on a heat map. So there's a real sense of accomplishment with that. So yeah, running itself has been great, but there's something else beyond the physical aspect of it. Now, many of you know I've become an ultra runner, and that takes mental fortitude, oftentimes more so than physical ability. I learned when I was first training for marathons that if I had a long run to do, let's say 18 miles, I would tell myself that my run that day was 22 miles. So in my head, I made it up as being longer. So when I was at mile 10, I would tell myself that I had 12 miles to go to reach that 22 miles. But by the time I was at mile 15, in reality, I was almost finished, and those final miles were very easy. See, just a head game. But I've used these same kind of tactics in different ways as my distances have increased. I look for milestones and I make up my own goals, like running every street and alley. If I didn't, I might just get dismayed, as I've seen happen to many of my running friends. They've stopped running because their races have been canceled and they don't feel like they have anything to work toward. But I'm of the mindset that I want to be prepared for when things do open up. And there's no reason why I can't train hard now and then create a new baseline for myself. And at that point, I'll have a new, better version of my running self when things do open. So I act as if. Now, in running and in business, I don't want to be caught unprepared for when things open up and there's some semblance of normalcy in the future. A friend forwarded an article that had a phrase in it that stood out for me. It was, another word for uncertainty is possibility. No one knows what's going to happen when. We're all living in uncertain times. So to go back to that phrase, another word for uncertainty is possibility. Now, if we can at least prepare ourselves for who we want to be on the other side of this, we'll be a few steps ahead. We'll be in a better space to help others, to lead others, and we'll be able to look at the future thinking about possibilities rather than being caught up in the uncertainty. Rather than thinking of things as uncertain, look at them as possibilities. I realize that when this is behind us, we won't necessarily ever go back to normal. Hopefully we won't. But whatever we bounce back to, we'll want to be prepared for it. Whatever mind game you have to play with yourself to get yourself out of bed, to get yourself dressed, to find a new challenge, to do something for your neighbor, to start an art project, just do it. What is it that motivates you? What are you passionate about? What makes you tick? Now's a great time to consider these questions. Now, if you haven't already listened to them, I have a series of conversations I've had with guests to help us all get through this pandemic. So I'd encourage you to go back and listen to those episodes. If you have heard them, go back and re-listen. Now, it starts with my conversation with Sabrina Sayer on episode 121. And during that, we talk about staying fit during a pandemic. Other episodes include Dr. Robin Benson on boosting your immune system, Janelle McCauley on dealing with stress, Janet Roten on staying mentally healthy, Laura Musikansky on staying happy, and yes, that is possible, and Deirdre Walnick on journaling during difficult times. All of these ladies have great suggestions on how to get through not only the pandemic, but their suggestions can be used to cope with our current societal issues as well. You do not need to be a runner. You do not need to be a meditator. But I'm sure you have your own tools in your toolkit that you can tap into. coping skills that you've used to get you through other difficult times. And please don't say it's drinking bottles of wine or gorging yourself on Girl Scout cookies. Think about positive, healthy tools you've used and lean toward those. Make good decisions. Know that bad decisions follow bad decisions, but good decisions follow good decisions. I hope you'll take this time to really get to know yourself better, to tap into the things that are really important to you, to help change for the better, not only the world at large, but your own piece of it. How are you going to get yourself on a course to be healthy and happy so that you can show up for other people? Okay, that's it for today. If you enjoy what you hear and you'd like to support the show, there are a number of ways you can do it. I'd first encourage you to go to patreon.com/bebold and join our community there. For just $5 a month, you can get some lovely benefits, including the ability to submit questions for me to ask guests, and you get access to bonus content, including questions I ask of the guests that only get shared with Patreon supporters. You'll also be able to join our private Facebook group, and that is ladies only. I want to welcome our most recent patron, Sarenka from Seattle. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarenka, and apologies if I've totally thrashed your name there. Patreon is a great way to show your love and let me know how much you appreciate these episodes. But there are other ways you can support the show. Make sure you're subscribed in your podcast app. That actually helps bump the show up in search results so others can find me. And please share this episode with a couple of friends. The number one way people find out about podcasts is word of mouth. So if you do enjoy these episodes, that's a fantastic way to show your support. To connect with me, you can friend me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram at both Beth Wittwa and Wandergal. You can find show notes at shesboldpodcast.com/episodes. Feel free to leave a message or a question at 877-280-5170. I love feedback, so you can either call and leave a message, or you can email me at beth@shesboldpodcast.com. Ladies, don't forget to join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/BeBoldGroup for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. And until next time, be bold.